This video is sponsored by Electronic Arts. Thank you to EA for sponsoring today's video. Just a quick reminder that you guys can still use my creator code on both the EA app and thesims.com. If you use code Jessicapie at checkout, it helps directly support me and my channel and all the builds that I make, and it's just a free way to help support creators. Really big thank you to everyone that has used my code in the past, and a big thank you if you're considering using my code in the future. But anyway, let's get into the video. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to my Sims 4 speedrunning video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building the world of Nordhaven, which is the world that we got from the latest expansion pack, The Sims 4 Businesses and Hobbies. It just recently came out, but I'm going to be building a art design museum with a cafe and apartment. So this lot ends up having 2 and a bit small business venue types on it, and what I mean by that is for this lot that I've built, there is 3 different gameplay opportunities for like different things within the venue itself. So we have a cafe, we then also have the art design museum, but then off the art design museum, if your Sims would like to, they can also visit this place and take an art class. But then on top of that, we have a quite decent size apartment on the top level that ends up having 1 bedroom and 2 bathrooms, and it also features a artist studio. Now for this week's video, EA recently reached out to me and asked if I would be interested if they could send me a mission task for me to try and basically accomplish with the new expansion pack, because if you're not aware, with the new EP that just came out, The Sims 4 Businesses and Hobbies, your Sims can own any sort of small business, like literally anything you can think of, you could put that into the game and you can make it into a small business. And they sent me this mission task, which was to make a small business art design museum in the brand new world of Nordhaven. They sent me like this little, I'm gonna say like post or like mail, so it looks like it's a letter that's been opened, and it basically writes out, it's meant to be from the new NPC that comes in this world, and basically it says that, well actually I'm not going to read it to you, I'm not very good at reading out loud. You can read it if you would like to, but I'll pop it on the screen if you fancy giving it a read. But yeah, they basically reached out to me and said, would I be interested in getting a mission task? At this point, I was like, don't know what it's going to be, but sure, let's give it a go. And it ended up being a small business art design museum. Now, I was quite nervous, I'm not going to lie to you, coming into this build, because community lots, especially museums, is something that I am so scared of when it comes around to building. I feel like in more recent months, maybe over the past like 6 months or so, I've got a little bit more comfortable with building community lot venues, but overall to build a museum was quite a daunting task. And so when they said a mission task, they weren't joking, like it was actually a bit of a task. But overall, I am really happy with the way that this lot came together and just the way everything just kind of like nicely goes with one another. I'm just, yeah, I'm really happy with it, and so I really hope you guys like it as well. But anyway, moving on from that and getting on and talking a little bit more about the build itself and also what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, I've already figured out the shape for this lot. It's very boxy, I will say that, but I did it for a purpose. There is a reason. Now, where I'm building it in the world of Nordhaven, I'm building it in a neighbourhood, which this was my first time building here. So far, I've done 3 builds in this world, including this one, but my first 2 were in the more kind of like historical part of the world, which is called Gamelvik. I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But where I'm building currently, this is in Iverstad. Again, I'm really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but basically there is like an old town period and then more of like an industrial, more kind of modernised area, and where I'm building is the more modernised one. And so when it came around to figuring out what's it going to look like, I used a lot of the kind of like fake buildings in the environment as my inspiration. And if you ever have a little like wander around this neighbourhood, they're all just big squares. Literally just all big red brick squares. And so when it came around to figuring the shape for this one, I basically just drew 3 long squares, pretty much rectangles, shoved them together, and yeah, that was basically the shape for it. Currently I'm just coming in and placing down some windows on one side of the building. On the bottom portion, you see where it's all like the glass windows. I was going to do the same on the upper levels, but you can see that I basically placed down the windows and realised it made it look like a really big glass cube. And so I decided to keep the glass windows all on the bottom, but then on the upper levels, I decided to basically just spread them out a little bit more. And then also something, I added in some little kind of like balcony railing details onto some of the windows. And if you're curious, they are from the Lovestruck expansion pack. When I was having a little wander around the neighbourhood and I was looking at like the live edit buildings, I noticed that on the live edit buildings, they have them balcony pieces. We initially got them in the build and buy category from Lovestruck, but yeah, they're in the buildings in the world of Nordhaven. And so because I wanted it to match the environment, I just decided to add them in. Currently, as you can see, I'm just coming in and figuring out the floor plan for the apartment, which is weird because normally whenever I do my floor plans, I always start off with the bottom level and then kind of like work my way up. But for this one, I kind of wanted to get the apartment floor plan, you know, like kind of done and dusted and then move on to the rest of it. By the way, currently I'm placing down some random pieces of furniture. Don't worry. Them furniture pieces that I'm placing down are just purely placeholders for my mind, so I know kind of like how much wiggle room I've got either side of the objects. They're not going to stay there. I do end up placing down, like, for example, where I place down the kitchen counters, I do end up making that into the kitchen room, but they were purely just kind of space guidelines in a way. I find that sometimes when I do floor plans, if I'm building a house and I don't put down a bit of furniture, I then come in to furnish the room and it ends up being either way too big or way too small, and then it's really hard to decorate it. And so recently I've been doing this thing where I'll place down furniture when I'm doing a floor plan just so I can kind of get a general gist for how much space I need for the object. And I mean, like I said, the apartment ends up being quite a spacious, quite decent size apartment. Like I said, it's only 1 bedroom, 2 bathrooms, but there is an artist studio, so if you wanted to, you could have a family live on the top level, and instead of having the artist section, you could just transform it into potentially a kid's bedroom or something, whatever you fancy. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now come in and started decorating the balcony for the apartment. Now over here, I'm still in two minds about it because I love both versions, but pretty much initially when I placed down all the different walls and I did the initial windows and the doors and stuff, I was just going to have it so this whole entire community lot was just going to be flat roofs or like half walls to act like the roofs. But then when I was doing this section and I had these quite nice floor to ceiling windows and little doors kind of like going into the kitchen area, I thought, well, it might be really nice to have some fake windows in the roofline. They don't add really anything to the gameplay and they don't add any like additional lighting, but I kind of liked the idea of having these like semicircular windows on the top roof portion. But then once I did it, I'm not sure if it now looks too much like a boat. I know it might be a bit confusing because currently it's not on the screen and currently I'm just pulling out loads of different live edit objects, but I'm in two minds whether I should have done the roof detail or not. You can see when I zoom out, I did also end up placing down some lights kind of like wrapping around the semicircle window, which I feel like that's why it looks like a boat to me, because it kind of looks like headlights on a little boat in the canal. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're building the world of Nordhaven and there is a few boats dotting about, and so maybe that's why it kind of looks like a boat. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I'm now coming in and just adding some little details onto the exterior. I must admit, I didn't add as many little details onto this lot as maybe what I would have. But the thing is, I didn't really have that much space because I'm building on I think this is a 20 by 20 lot of memory. But if you're curious, I always leave the initial lot name in the top left corner of the screen. And also, the one that I'm building on is an empty lot by default. So when you enter a brand new save file, and if you have got your hands on the new expansion pack, there will be nothing on this lot. And so if you're maybe looking to find something to fill it up, you can always just download this build of the gallery because you won't have to delete anything to place this down. The lot was just a bit of grass beforehand. But where I'm building on such a small lot, I didn't really have that much space to place down loads of different signs and bins and like random knickknacks. However, on the back portion, I had quite a nice little like cube space, and so I decided to make it into kind of like the cafe's garden. Now in my head, to have a cafe attached to this little like art gallery museum is kind of like the perfect fit, because I was thinking for gameplay purposes, right, at the end of the day, a museum is not the most thrilling gameplay experience. No offense, but sometimes you get your Sims to visit a museum lot, they look at a painting, yeah, it's alright. And then they just go home. And so I was thinking, I want to have multiple different things for gameplay attached to this lot. And normally, whenever you go to like an art gallery or if you go to a museum, there'll normally be some sort of like cafe or like some sort of cafeteria attached to it. And so I thought, well, if I have like a little coffee shop, your Sims can visit this lot, they could pop upstairs, they can have a look at all the different paintings and the sculptures. Maybe if they fancy, they can also take a painting class because, like I said, there's kind of like a little like lesson section upstairs. Oh, also, by the way, forgot to mention, I made it kid and infant friendly on this lot. And what I mean by that is in the art section where your Sims could take a painting class, I also decided to include some drawing tables for the kids in the game. And so maybe if your Sims wanted to come on like a family day out or something, the parents could be at the easel and then the kids are in the back and they're on their little drawing tables. And then for infants, I say I made it infant friendly. I just made sure that there was somewhere to change an infant's nappy because I'm thinking you're going out for the day, maybe the infant has an accident in their nappy and your Sims need to change it. And so, yeah, in the bathroom for the little art museum section, I included a community like changing table thing. We got it from the Growing Together expansion pack, but with the Growing Together DLC, we've got like the at-home changing stations, and then there is one up for community venues, and so I just popped that in there. But yeah, after your Sims have finished painting, they can maybe pop down into the little cafe and maybe grab a bite to eat or maybe get a coffee. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the actual cafe and I'm coming in and figuring out how like the back wall behind the little like espresso bar is going to look. Thankfully, at this point in the game, we've got so many different wall decorations and paintings that have like coffee attached to them, and there's one that's got a random pretzel, and it looks like basically, you know, when you walk into like your local cafe or your local coffee shop and it's got all their coffees and maybe all the different types of syrups and stuff. Thankfully, from loads of different DLCs, we've got quite a good handful of them, and at this point I was actually struggling on which ones I was going to use, but I think the bottom one, like the really big skinny wide one, that is surprisingly from Discover University, and then the little one on top that's kind of got like the pink detail in, that is from, I believe, the Get Together expansion pack off memory. But over here on this back counter, I placed down what I was picturing could be like coffee beans in a sack. They're actually just debug menu items that we got from the Cottage Living expansion pack, but it just felt like it belonged on kind of like a counter in a coffee shop somewhere. And so, yeah, I popped them onto the back section. And then on the like front espresso bar, you can just about see it, but I've currently placed down an empty jar, and then I placed down a wad of simoleons on the inside of it. The one that I've used currently, I believe, is from the Cottage Living debug menu. It's meant to be something that your Sims can make like canning from or something, but I do end up deleting it and replacing it with a jar that we got from the build and buy category, which is from, I think, the 4 rent expansion pack. And then I also replaced the money that's on the inside of it. You'll see that shortly, but currently over here, as you can see, I'm just coming in and cluttering out the back section. So I placed down some coffee bags onto a little shelf, and then also some mugs. I got another one of them like coffee bean bags. Even though the coffee or supposed coffee on the inside of it is different colours, I do still feel like it would be something that you can find in a cafe. The actual item itself is meant to be llama fur from Cottage Living. You know, when you shave a llama, you're meant to kind of like collect them in your inventory or something, but I just thought they looked really nice in this little coffee shop as decoration. So yeah, I popped them onto the back counter, as well as a candy making station that we got from the new EP, and then also just a bog standard coffee machine. But over here, I'm doing something which I'm going to refer to as kind of like a get your coffee and go situation. So I placed down this little table, and then on the top of it I placed down these little spatulas, but I sized them down really small to make it look like spoons. And then I also placed down some different tins, and then also like a little coffee, oh, what's it called? We don't have them in the UK really, but you know, in the US when you have like an actual coffee making station pot, a coffee pot, I placed down a few coffee pots, both on that section, but then also dotted about on some of the tables. But I had this idea of, you know, sometimes when you go into a coffee shop and you might get a coffee to go, and maybe you're someone that wants to add your own milk, or maybe you want to add a sweetener or sugar or something, there'll normally be like a little table where you can do that by the exit. That's basically what that little table was. I've just did it for reason purposes, because to me, I would just walk into my local coffee shop and see something like this. And then I also did place another little jar with money on the inside. I was just thinking it was a tip jar or something, which I feel like is quite common to see, you know, in whether it be a restaurant or a cafe or something. Sometimes by like the cash register, people will have little jars so you can tip the workers. And so, yeah, I just replaced the initial jars that I placed down and then placed down the ones that we got from For Rent. And initially, when I placed down money into the jars, I literally got a legitimate wad of cash and sliced it down. But then I found with the Businesses and Hobbies at debug menu, there is still a wad of cash, but it looks like a wad of cash that's kind of been folded over and, you know, like put in someone's pocket or something. And so I just replaced that. But also in this room as well, I placed down multiple different tables and chairs. I did place down some clutter on the top of the different tables, but I tried to keep it to a minimum because in reality with gameplay, it might just be quite handy to have next to no decorations, just because Sims will either order some food or they might order a coffee or something, and you don't want it to kind of like interfere with where it's going to sit on the table. And so I just added in, I think, like a little flower, a menu, and then also on like one or two of the tables, a little coffee pot as well as a little mug. I did purposely make it, by the way, so for Sims to be able to access the espresso bar, they have to walk through a door, which kind of goes into a bit of like a storage area, which I was thinking is where they keep maybe to-go cups or maybe extra coffee bits and bobs. But your Sims have to walk through a door to then walk through another door to gain access to the area. I was just thinking in gameplay it might be really easy, because then in like the build and buy mode you can make it so only employees or people that are working at the cafe can kind of like enter that little section, and not like random townies like Jeffrey Landgrab's not gonna go behind there or something. But I basically just finished off the cafe by placing down some curtains as well as some fairy lights. But now moving over, I've started coming in and decorating the museum. Now, like I said, coming into this build, I was quite nervous when EA said to me that my mission task was to build an art design museum, because building a community lot, I find personally one of the hardest things to build in the game. But then also to build a museum, they're so hard to build in the game. I think off memory I might have only built one or two in the past prior to this. And so when it came around to actually furnishing the museum portion, I was just trying to think, okay, I don't want to over clutter it, I don't want to overpower it, because a lot of the times when you go into museums, the decorations are kept to a minimum. There's a few like little seating areas, and you know, sometimes there is cafes attached to them or maybe toilets and stuff. But in terms of general clutter and decoration, you go to a museum to see the decorations that are kind of displays on the wall. And so I feel like a lot of the furnishing that would be inside of a museum would be kept to a minimum, and all of like the interesting decorations would just be like all the different things on display. And so when it came around to doing this build, yeah, I tried to keep the clutter to it's still cluttered, but I just didn't go ham, if you know what I mean, in this one. I tried to think, I don't want it to be overpowered, I want it to be easy for gameplay. And so, yeah, I just tried to go along with that idea in my mind. But something that I did dot about in multiple different rooms in this museum are a ton of different headphones, which you can see over here. I've just placed down onto this little side table, because I was thinking, right, what do I actually put on a side table in a museum? Because in this section, this is just by the like little toilet area, and I wanted there to be somewhere there was like a vending machine, and you know, your Sims could either get something to eat or maybe get a collectible or something. Currently, I placed down a vending machine that serves food, but eventually I'll replace it with one where your Sims can get a Simmy collection, which is one of the collectibles in the game. I just thought it would just be quite nice to go to a museum and kind of get like a little gift from the museum, you know. And so I replaced that one. But yeah, on the side table, I was thinking, well, what actually goes on a side table on a community venue? And then I thought, well, sometimes when you go to museums, you can get little like audio guides to kind of like guide you through the whole museum, like all the different rooms and stuff. And so I placed down headphones thinking that they were audio guides for the guests. If you're curious, they are from the Get Together debug menu. It's when your Sims, because from that expansion pack, your Sims can like DJ and stuff, like there's a new DJing skill, but with that they hold the little headphone. So where it's something that they will hold in gameplay, you can normally find it in the debug menu. And so yeah, I just used the ones that we got from Get Together. However, I think if you haven't got that pack, there is other headphones from different DLCs. I think there might be some debug headphones from off memory get famous potentially. But yeah, I just thought it was like a nice little clutter piece that does actually add some reasons and purposes. I feel like it's a bit of a given, but it's not functional. It's just purely for like the realism idea of, you know, their headphones for guests to use. I also did dot some about in like random rooms in this museum, thinking, you know, someone might have took their headphones off and then accidentally left them. For example, in this bathroom, I placed one down to like a little counterpiece, but in the bathroom itself, I just placed down a few different toilet stalls and then also a little like sink area, and then in the corner I just popped down that little changing table that I was talking about, the one that we got from Growing Together, where your Sims can basically change the infant's nappy on the go. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now moved on into the next room, which I don't even know what I'm classing this as, because basically I had this little room, but it was too small to make into some sort of exhibit. And so I was thinking, or maybe your Sims want to come to the museum and do potentially some research. And so the sign that I placed outside the door had kind of like a little email letter symbol. And so maybe your Sims want to come here, do some research. Maybe they want to send some emails. Maybe elders in the world of Nordhaven haven't got a computer at home. And so sometimes they pop over to the museum and use the computer. Honestly, I just didn't know what else to do with it, and I thought, at least a computer adds gameplay, and then that way as well I can place down some bookcases, which also adds gameplay. Your Sims can read from the bookcases. They're new from the expansion pack, and I think we've got 3 different versions of them, but I basically placed them down kind of like in different swatches of them, so they're not all the exact same thing. And then also in here as well, I placed down like a random sculpture in the corner, and then also a globe and a few different paintings, but not that many. I purposely placed down some paintings on the wall, which is on the other side, but they're kind of like older looking paintings, and so maybe that's where your Sims can come and find out about the history of the world of Nordhaven, and maybe the paintings on the wall is what the city used to look like, potentially. I'm not too sure, but either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on to the upstairs, and I've actually started coming in and making this place look like an actual museum. So in the initial mission task that EA sent over to me, it said that they wanted to challenge me to build a small art museum, which is what I'm doing, but then they also mentioned that it would be a good idea if I had art from Trashly's shop. I say this, the letter that was wrote to me was supposedly from Trashly, which is this new NPC that comes with the Businesses and Hobbies expansion pack. It's basically a bunch of raccoons stacked on top of each other wearing a trench coat, and it's meant to pretend to be a person, but it's actually a load of different raccoons. But basically, there is all this different art that you can get from Trashly, and you can find it in the debug menu. But the fun thing about the art from this whole expansion pack, it's basically redesigns of pre-existing base game artwork. And what I mean by that is the majority of the paintings will have a base game version of it somewhere, and you can see over here the initial painting will just meant to be Sims, but then if you get the artwork from Trashly, it's basically the Sims redesigned as raccoons, but I thought it was really funny. And so when I came in and I started decorating this room, I was initially just going to place down the artwork itself, but then I was thinking, well, maybe this is a new exhibit that is featuring currently in this museum, and maybe an artist, a local artist, has recently redesigned maybe really popular paintings and done like a raccoon version of it. And so I thought, well, why don't I place down the base game initial painting, what it used to look like, and then pop down on one side of it the raccoon version of it. And so you can see on the half walls, I would have placed down all these different photos of whether it be like jazz paintings or more traditional looking photos, and I'll have the original version, which is in base game, but then just next to it I'll have the raccoon version. There is a handful of paintings that don't have animals in them. Like some of the paintings that you can get from Trash's shop will be like this base game chicken painting, bit random I know, but this base game chicken painting, but the version that you get from the expansion pack, if you get it from Trashly, it's the chicken, but it looks like a kid's drawn it. There's also one of, I think it's meant to be like an elephant or something like that. It's meant to be like a toddler piece of artwork, but then Trash's version of it is a zebra. I'm pretty sure that one is the only one that I didn't use in this build. Other than that, I feel very confident to say that I'm pretty sure I was able to use all the other artwork pieces. There is also random ones of like sunflowers where where initially the base game version is a lovely little painting of some watercolour sunflowers, but then Trash's version looks like a 2-year-old drawer. And then there is also a version of the clown painting as well, which the clown painting, the initial one that you pull it out of Build and Buy, is meant to be the sad clown. And it's kind of like this thing where in gameplay, if you get a sim to view this painting a certain amount of times, basically the sad clown will show up, and you don't want him to show up because he brings down the mood. He's a bit of a sad sim, and he'll make your sim sad. But then from Trashly, there's a version of the painting, and the clown is happy. There is also a few different sculpture pieces from Trash's shop. There is a bust of Princess Cordelia, and she's wearing sunglasses, which I placed down into the other room. And then there is also, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a bust of a sim, but it kind of cuts off just below the belly button. But then in the debug version from Trash's shop, the mannequin bust thing has googly eyes. Hopefully you saw it when I placed it down. But yeah, I basically tried to place down all the different artwork pieces apart from one painting in this build somewhere. And I was thinking maybe a local artist has redesigned these very famous, very popular paintings and done a version of them with raccoons instead of people. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the next room, which is almost like an art class painting room. So in my head, I'm thinking your Sims can come to the museum, they can grab a cup of coffee in the cafe downstairs, they can also view a few sculptures, they can look at some artwork and stuff. But at the end of the day, for gameplay, I know personally for me, I'll get bored after 10 minutes, and I don't want to always go through loading screens to go to multiple different venues. And so I was thinking, well, instead of making a second room filled with, once again, paintings that your Sims are just going to, look at and call it a day, why not actually make some sort of like gameplay, give it some sort of initiative for your Sims to visit here? And so I thought I'd make it into some sort of art class. So in here, as you can see, I placed down the whiteboard on one of the back walls, and then in front of it I placed down multiple different art easels. Now I will say, you've got to bear with me because I shimmy this room around a little bit, because initially I came in and I placed down the whiteboard towards the left hand side of the room, and then kind of placed down these art easels, and I wanted there to be enough space and so there was not going to be any issues, and I placed them all down, and then I was like, oh actually maybe I want to have it on the other wall, and then I moved it and then moved the art easels and then went back to my original decision. Where the whiteboard is and all the different easels, it's now where it's going to stay, and it doesn't even look like it took me that long, but I felt like I was debating with myself for ages on what way round the art easels and stuff could be. But this way round, with having the whiteboard on this back left wall, gave me enough space to be able to add in the kids drawing tables at the end. They are in the whiteboard guidelines, which, what I mean by that, this new whiteboard that we got from the Businesses and Hobbies expansion pack, it's kind of got like this diameter of, is that the right word? Don't know, we're gonna go with it, but it's got this grid that's around it. You can kind of see on some sections of the floor there's kind of like tape. Basically that's the area that Sims that will be teaching on the whiteboard, it can reach that far to the end of the room. And I did place down the kids drawing tables on the inside of that. Now I will say, currently I haven't playtested this a lot, but as always, before I pop it onto the gallery, I'll playtest absolutely everything to make sure everything is usable. I will be quite surprised if children will also be able to be taught from the whiteboard, but if they can't, at least your Sims kids can also come to an art class with, like their parents or maybe other family members like their aunties and their uncles and stuff. And even if they're not participating, it can, for like gameplay purposes, look like they are. And they're at the back, they're doing some summer crafts or they're making friendship bracelets or something. I just thought it was really sweet to add in some things for multiple members of the family. But also in this room as well, I placed down 2 different woodworking tables as well. Honestly, just for a little bit of extra gameplay. If you're curious where they're from, the ones that I've used are from the Artist Studio Kit, which I also use the art easels in this room as well from that DLC. We do have a handful of different art easels in the game, but the ones that we got from Artist Studio Kit look a little bit more realistic in a way. Like there's some colour swatches where some of them have like paint dripped on them and just they look a little bit more used, a bit, they've actually been painted on. So I mismatched different swatches of them. But then also the woodworking table is from that DLC. A lot of the different clutter items that I placed down into that room were from the Artist Studio Kit, but I mean, in my defence, it was kind of like the perfect kit for that little space. But I just finished it off by placing down some curtains onto the wall, and now moving over. As you can see, I've now moved on to the upstairs portion. I'm currently coming in and decorating the apartment. Also, apologies if you just heard a random click and you thought it was you. It was me. I don't know what it is, but my monitors, even though they're not new, I've had them for about 2 years now, randomly, they will just click, and sometimes it does it in the middle of the night, and it makes me very scared, because when you're trying to sleep and all of a sudden your monitors start cracking, I don't know why it happens, but it's actually kind of concerning that it happens. But yeah, sorry if you heard that random crack, but either way, in here, as you can see, I quickly just did the initial entrance hallway into the apartment, and already I'm moving on and doing kind of like the guest bathroom. Now, in this apartment, like I said, there is 2 bathrooms, but I only show you the furnishing for this one, because even though it's not the ensuite, even though it's like not the main bathroom that I imagine that Sims would use the most, it does end up being the biggest one. Initially, and I don't know if you would have noticed it, but when I first of all came into this room and I started decorating it, I was going to try and have some sort of like bathroom leafy feature wall in this room, just because at the end of the day, I decorate so many bathrooms. I can't not even tell you the amount of different bathrooms that I've decorated, and sometimes they're just a little bit too samey. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's only so many times that I can place down a toilet or a bathtub and make it look interesting. And so initially, when I came into this bathroom, I was thinking, all right, well, I imagine that the Sims that live in this apartment probably do own the little like art design museum downstairs, and so they're going to be quite artsy. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe if I do some sort of feature wall in the bathroom. Swiftly changed my mind, didn't like it, and so in the end I went for this base game wallpaper and then also base game tile. In here though, there is no shower, there's only a bathtub, and there's also no shower in the other bathroom, which I know for gameplay showers are so much more convenient, but just the way that there are so many different windows in this apartment, I couldn't place down a shower realistically in front of a window without blocking it. I could have placed down a shower where the toilet is, but then the counter would then end up blocking the window and it'll be our thing. And so yeah, there is no shower in this apartment, but of course if you want to download this build of the gallery, you can of course replace it with maybe a shower and bath combo, or maybe one of them showers that your Sims can just seamlessly walk over. I don't show it because I cut it out, but in the second bathroom I did debate adding in one of them showers that Sims could walk over, but it looked a bit weird, and so I decided to scrap that idea. But either way, regardless, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the kitchen. So in here, I am just absolutely obsessed with the way that the lighting kind of like shines down into this room, because where this kitchen is kind of like placed in the floor plan, you would have seen when I was initially doing it, but I knew that I wanted the kitchen, which to me is kind of like the heart of where my Sims majority will spend a lot of their time. I wanted it to kind of be in a space that had a lot of natural daylight. I did have this room that I could have potentially made into a lounge room or something, but I just thought it'd be so lovely for one of the Sims that lives in this apartment to be in the kitchen cooking up something for dinner, and then the other one be outside on the balcony. Now I will say there is no official dining room in this apartment, but there is a little single table with a few different chairs dotted about it on the exterior, and so if your Sims want to have like a sit down meal, they'd go out there. I do also make it so the kitchen has like a kitchen island with some bar stools, but I always picture whenever I do builds and I have an island with bar stools that would more so be for like breakfast and lunch, not so much for dinner. At least this is how I get my Sims to act whenever I play the game myself. My Sims, if they're having breakfast and they do end up having some sort of like kitchen island, I like them to eat at the kitchen island, and then, you know, someone else is making a coffee or something like that, then they can chit chat before their day begins. Whereas a dining room table, I feel like is quite, honestly, formal. Like, it's just a little bit too formal, and so it's a rare occasion that I actually get my Sims to sit down at one, but there is a little tiny one outside the balcony. But in here, as you can see, I decided to go for these base game counters and then match it with a Home Chef Hustle fridge, and then the little oven and stovetop are separate, and they are from the Dream Home Decorator game pack. When I first came in and I started decorating the kitchen island, initially my idea was to have three, basic, simple kitchen counters on one side, have the oven and then have the hob. And on the other side, my plan initially was to place down one of the mixology bars, where your Sims can make themselves a drink or something. And we do have a matching bar to go along with these kitchen counters. But the thing is, I pulled it out and straight away I put it back into the build a buy category because the default swatch of this one bar that matches the kitchen counters, for some reason, it has some sort of like green, I want to call it like a fabric or some sort of like green cushiony bit onto the bar, and it just completely threw off how the rest of the room was looking. And so I scrapped that idea, placed down just normal bar counters, and then on the opposite side of the room, I placed down a bit of a semicircle bar. The one that I've used is from the new expansion pack, and then behind it I popped down a little painting of what looks to be a glass of something. There's also like a little neon light over there, as well as a wall plant, or like a hanging wall plant. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now moved back and I've moved over to the lounge room. Now, I know this probably seems like I did this in such a weird sequence because normally when it comes around to furnishing, I like to go room by room and then we kind of like go throughout the apartment as it kind of is laid out. But the reason why I did this lounge room now is because honestly, this was my third attempt at decorating this lounge room, which sounds so silly because it's not, it's lovely, but it's not like the most extravagant thing in the world. But the first couple of times that I tried to decorate this room, I just ended up making it look so modern and kind of cold in a way. You see the sofas that I've currently got out, these are from the refined living room set, and in the previous two attempts of this room I had used them sofas and I like them, don't get me wrong. I think the refined living room kit is lovely, but it's just very modern and I just didn't know how I was going to decorate the kitchen. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to scrap this, I'm going to go and do the kitchen, see how that pans out, see what kind of like aesthetic that I'm going for in this apartment, because I feel like a kitchen is a good way to gauge that. And once I've got that done or sorted, I'll then revisit the lounge room. And so yeah, that's what I did. In the end, I decided to go for these sofas that we got from the industrial loft kit. And then also in this room as well, I placed down a new fireplace that we got from the Businesses Hobbies EP. Lovely. I love this new fireplace. And there is also a second version which is a little bit more traditional. It's a little bit more like a circular one, whereas the one that I placed down is a little bit more cubey. But also in this room as well, I placed down a bookcase, I popped down like a little radio station in there, as well as some decorations. And then also in the corner, I placed down a TV unit with a TV, and then on one side of it, a quite cool looking retro guitar. With the new expansion pack, we did get a new standing piano, which I'm so happy, side subject, that we've now got standing pianos in the game, because for the longest time, and when I say this, I mean literal years, I was making standing pianos out of side tables and a keyboard. But we did get a new standing piano from the EP alongside with that retro guitar, and I realised that in all of the builds that I've done with the expansion pack so far, I hadn't used either of them. And so I thought, well, in the lounge room, it kind of adds a little bit of gameplay, because if you fancy, your Sims might be a musician or something. Maybe one of the Sims owns and kind of manages the museum down below, and then the other one is maybe a musician or some sort of artist in the musical field. But yeah, it just kind of adds a little bit of gameplay, and then also some sort of decoration. But either way, besides the point, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved on into the art studio. Now, I kind of struggled with this room a little bit because the way that I decorated the rest of the apartment, it's industrial, it's a little bit modern, but it's not too cluttered and it's not too messy. And when it came around to doing the art studio, I'm thinking, this is a place where someone is going to be painting all the time. There's going to be loads of different drips and drops of paint on the floor. There's going to be maybe a few different markings on the wall where, wear and tear over time. And so I've really struggled with this room, because normally whenever I do artist related stuff, I make them very cluttered, very lived in, like how a lot of artist studios are in real life. But with this room, I still wanted it to be that, but I just kind of struggled with the decoration in this room. I did end up placing down a few different splatters onto the floor and not so much onto the walls. I did also place down a little painted rug that, I say painted rug, it's a rug that looks like it's got paint on it, and then I placed down some newspaper and then the paint splatters on top of it. But also in this room as well, I placed down a few different sketches onto the walls for decoration. I placed down like little cabinets that I imagine hold all sorts of like art supplies and brushes and stuff. And then we have, of course, the art easel in the corner alongside with another woodworking table. again, just for purely gameplay purposes, if your Sims maybe want to get into woodworking. But now moving on, as you can see, I've now moved over to the last room in this whole entire lot, and it is the bedroom. Sitting here, I went for the new expansion packs bed, which I've said already in previous videos, but I'm so in love with this new bed, and it comes in so many lovely swatches. But I paired it with 2 bedside tables that are from the Lovestruck expansion pack, kind of pair quite nicely. But then I also put down a little wardrobe in this room alongside with a few more decorations on the wall and a plant in the corner. But other than that, I'm going to go around this room, finish it off, and that is pretty much it. So anyway guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or you can search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. Once again, thank you to EA for sponsoring today's video. I really hope I did the mission task justice. I really hope that you guys like it, but I also want to kind of like open this up to you guys. So if you also fancy giving this task a go, I will leave the graphic on the screen, so yeah, you can try it out for yourself. But other than that, if you guys do like my content, then please do subscribe. And hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedrunning video. Bye guys.